Hi guys. For those of you that don't know, driving and talking is very therapeutic for me. It's no different from singing in the car, talking to God in the car, talking to my kids in the car. So I'm fine, don't worry. But what I want to talk to you guys today, for today's talking while driving therapy, God reminded me of something that we spoke about the other day, and I want to talk to you guys about this. And I just want to let you guys know, like, listen, no matter how much the enemy tries to block your path, the enemy can't block your path. He can't. He really can't. Like, let me tell you something about prophecy, okay? Our story is written before we are even born, okay? Before we come out the womb, our story has already been written. So God knows every plot, every plan, every obstacle, everything we're gonna face before we even face it, right? And that means that no matter what we do, even though God gives us free will, He knows what's going to happen. He knows what type of decisions we're going to make, good or bad, even though we have free will, right? So God is strategic, because even when the devil does things to block us, God still makes sure that it's according to our plan, according to His will. Okay, not our plan, but His will for our lives. His plan, because His plan is our plan, okay? So God uses our enemies, and God will have destiny helpers in any area to help uplift us, to pick us back up when we're down. And a lot of times, like I told you guys in other videos, our destiny helpers, most of the times we won't even know that we've met our destiny helper. You get what I'm saying? Because most of the times, destiny helpers don't come to us with big white wings like angels and a halo over their head. Hey, I'm a child of God, I'm here to help you. They come to us as like normal people, or we go to them, or we are sent to them. And sometimes destiny helpers are not meant to stay in our lives. They're only meant to be in our life for a short period of time. You know, like a destiny helper may come in your life and maybe be in your life for a month, 2 months, and then you learn what you have to learn within that time frame, and then you part ways from the person, right? So let me give you an example. So back in the day, I was not on the right path, okay? I was getting in a lot of trouble. I was doing things I wasn't supposed to be doing, all of that. But on top of that, I was going through therapy, I was going through counseling and all of that stuff. And when I would go to therapy and counseling, a lot of times my therapist, now that I think back about it, because God had to remind me the other day about a couple of them. I think back about it and I'm like, wow, God, you really had amazing therapists help me. So it's like back in the day, I didn't know these were destiny helpers. I didn't know that these are prophets and prophetess that were helping me. But now that I'm older and I understand my gifts and I look back, I see where I had a destiny helper in my life assist me and help me. I've had people in my life that were my therapists prophesy to me about what I'm doing today. What I'm doing exactly today. I've had therapists prophesy to me what I'm going to be doing 10 years from now. And the same prophecies these therapists have shown me, guess what? God showed me years later. God showed me years later. The prophetess that prophesied to me what I'm going to be doing in 10 years from now, God showed me what she said in vision 2 years ago. But when I saw her, that therapist, she prophesied this to me, I think it was like 8 years ago, 8 or 7 years ago. right? And I would have never thought. So I was thinking back to a time a couple days ago, because God reminded me of this woman, and I got into so much trouble at this back in the day, and I had to go through to probation office because I got in trouble, right? And when I went to the probation office, my probation officer, it's like she was the most nicest person I've ever met. And when I went to go see you would never think that visiting a probation officer would be fun. Who thinks visiting a probation officer is fun? Nobody, right? So when I went to go visit my probation officer years ago, I loved visiting her because it didn't feel like a probation officer. When I went to visit her, all she did was listen to me. She just listened to me talk. She would ask me about my dreams, my aspirations. I'm getting emotional. My dreams, my aspirations. She motivated me. She uplifted me. And I was honest with her about things I'm doing in my life and stuff like that. And she would just literally just listen to me talk and just be so nice, there for me, everything. It didn't feel like a probation officer. And then she was like, I got to introduce you to someone. I'm like, who? She's like, I'm going to introduce you to a therapist that works in the office. I'm like, okay. She introduced me to the therapist. Another amazing woman. When I was talking to the therapist, she did the same thing. She would listen to me talk. And guess what? What I noticed is the probation officer and the therapist, when they would listen to me talk and they would ask me things about my childhood, what I've been through, and the things I had endured growing up, both of them, after analyzing everything that I was telling them, both of them told me, even my probation officer, she told me too. She said it before my therapist said it, but she looked at me and she said, do you know that there is nothing wrong with you? Do you know that your whole life you've been blaming yourself for the things that other people have done to you? Do you know that from analyzing your childhood, do you know that you lacked a lot of things that you deserved to have as a child? And I didn't even know all this until she mentioned it. Down to like a lot of times I thought that I was a bad child and I was in the wrong because of how I was treated from my parent. But my probation officer said to me, you're an amazing child, that your parent was wrong. And my whole life I've been hearing I was wrong. I didn't know anything about narcissism at the time. I had no idea that narcissism even existed at the time. You know what I'm saying? So when she mentioned it to me, I didn't know what that word even meant. So when she brought me to the therapist now, she's like, well, I want you to talk to this therapist. She's really good. I said, okay. When I talked to the therapist, and when I talked to the therapist, every time I went to my therapy session, I cried tears. Because I've never felt so welcomed, so comforted. When I walked in the therapist's office, it just felt like the Holy Spirit was there. Now that I know what the Holy Spirit feels like, back then, that's the feeling I felt. And I didn't really know at the time. And when I would talk to the therapist, she said the same thing. She said, you are dealing with narcissism. And a lot of the stuff you've been through, you blamed yourself for, and other people have blamed you for it. And you didn't even realize that you start to blame yourself for it. And they did a lot of analyzing. Like the therapist actually ended up calling like my parents, talking to people that I knew, and hearing what their perceptions of me. And then she talked to me about my parents, people that I know, and heard my perception about everything. And what the therapist did was, after she analyzed everything and did all the paperwork and all that stuff, and you know how when they do the paper, they come to a conclusion and they come to either a diagnosis or analysis or something like that as to what is wrong with you. The therapist literally said, there's nothing wrong with you. She literally said, you are a gifted child. She said, you are lacking love. You've been through emotional, mental abuse. You are a victim of narcissism. And I didn't know what she was talking about. So I'm not telling her this. She's telling me this. And after she told me that, it was like, I'm like, here I am. I'm here. I'm like, I have to tell myself, like, listen, you're hearing this from a professional. You're hearing this from two professionals. One's a probation officer, one's a therapist, and they're both telling you the same thing. Not only that, but you've heard this before in the past from a doctor. You know, so after that session, like those sessions, because we had a lot of sessions, the sessions after that, once we came to the resolution as to what the problem is, and I finally figured out what the problem is, we started talking about, she's like, okay, now that we know what the issues are, we know what's caused a lot of the heartache and stuff in your life, the pain, the abuse, now we got to figure out how we're going to fix it. Now we got to figure out how you're going to progress, what you're going to do for your future so you don't end up getting in trouble again. What can we do to fix this? So my therapist, she started going over a bunch of things that she thinks that I would be into after analyzing me for all these months. You know, she's like, okay, now that I know your personality stuff and I know who you are and you're comfortable with me and we've opened up, here's a list of things that I feel like you are going to be so good at in the future. And here's what I can see in you. I didn't even know she was a Christian. God told me 2 days ago she was a Christian. I didn't know that. But I'm going back to like the things that she said, and it makes so much sense. So she's like, here's what I see in you. For her to say, here's what I see in you, I'm like, okay. You know? And then she prophesied. I didn't even know she was prophesying, but she prophesied my life right in front of me without even me realizing she was prophesying to me. And she started telling me, she said, you're going to be helping hundreds and thousands of people that have been through what you've been through. You are going to be inspiring. You are going to uplift people. You are going to turn your pain into a blessing. And then she started talking about some other things that's going to happen. She's like, this is going to happen later on in your life, which I can't mention right now. But she prophesied something that's going to happen in my life 10 years from now. And 2 days ago, I'm sitting with God, and she just came to mind. I saw her in she came to mind, and I saw a vision of her as she came to mind, and God showed me her. So I didn't even know she was a prophet. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's a prophet. And he said she's a Christian. Ooh, I can feel the Holy Spirit tingling on top of my head right now. You know when the Holy Spirit tingles the top of your head? Jeez, it's like when you get goosebumps on your body, but I get goosebumps on top of my head. Okay? And he said she's a Christian. That's what he said. And I was like, I knew it. Because after I thought about it, but I wasn't sure. I was like, I knew it. So he confirmed it to me. And he let me know that she prophesied, and what she prophesied is coming to pass in my life. Right? So I was like, wow, she was a destiny helper that came in my life for that period of time without me even knowing she was a destiny helper, and she literally helped me. Because after I saw her, she was the one that gave me the complete, you know, basically the complete, I forgot how to say the word, dialysis, I don't know how to say the word, the complete, like, resolution as to what I've been going through my whole life and what the problem is and what I've endured, and I didn't even know. And you know, so when I got that confirmation from her and resolution from her as to what's going on, I started to realize what I was battling and what I was fighting, and my life actually ended up changing from then, because the decisions I started making after that, I started to try to do, I was still not on the right path, but I had an understanding as to what I'm trying to heal from. Do you get it? So it really helped me. And I also had an understanding as to where I'm heading because of her, right? So God used her and my probation officer in those moments. Then God reminded me a couple of days ago about the nurse, because I went to a psychiatric ward when I was in grade 5 because I was very suicidal. And when I went to the psychiatric ward, there was a woman there. She was a nurse that was seeing me every day, and she would talk to me every day. And she made me feel so special. She made me feel so loved. And I didn't know the whole time that I was bonding with her. I had no idea that she was like analyzing me and writing notes about me. I didn't know, because she didn't make it obvious. right? She would just hang around with me, play video games with me, everything. And I remember when she went to my parents and she said, we found out why your daughter is suicidal. We found out what the problem is. This is the diagnosis. And I remember I didn't get the full conversation. I didn't hear the full conversation because I was young. But I heard a part of the conversation. And I remember the part that I heard the conversation was, she needs love. She doesn't have any love in her life. She needs love. So that nurse that said that at age 5, my probation officer said it at age, what age was I when I said probation officer? I forgot, but I was probably I think I was 22 or something. My probation officer at age 22 said the same thing. My therapist said the same thing. There was another woman, and this was my grade 5 teacher. She was also a destiny helper. In grade 5, I had so much trouble emotionally, mentally. And in grade 5, I was also very suicidal. And this teacher would end up helping me with my work. And it was to the point where this teacher would stay after school and sit with me and do my work with me. And now that I'm older, I'm realizing how caring she is, because I always knew she was caring, but because she always uplifted me, always made me feel like I was special. But now that I'm older, I'm remembering the types of things that she would do in order to help me. She had a daughter that went to school also, but she went to a different school. And she had to pick up her daughter every day from school. But guess what this teacher would do? She would have her daughter's dad drop her to the school where she's working, because she was spending an hour to an hour and a half after school sitting down with me, doing extra work with me, making sure I got all my work completed, homework completed, doing one-on-one with me. And that hour and a half would take away from her time to go pick up her child. So she would have someone bring her child to the school, and her child would sit down and do her work with me, and she would do the work with both of us. And she did this for 2 months straight, until I caught up in school, until I started to get more confident. She would even do assignments before she taught the whole class the assignments. She would go over it with me as a head start. So when she does assignments with the class, I already know what to do. And now that I'm adult and I'm seeing back, she wasn't getting paid for that. She was going out of her way to do it. She could have said, okay, if school's over, I have to go pick up my child and go home. But she would have either her ex-husband pick up the child or someone else pick up the child and bring the child to the school so she could stay back and help me. She was also a destiny helper. And let me tell you how I know she was a destiny helper. Because she has never left my mind one time. I would never, as a child, I never forgot that. When I had my daughter, the nurse that I had my daughter that took care of me, I was bonding with her. And she said to me after I had my daughter, she said, I will never forget you. She said, you're always going to be in my heart. And then the nurse said to me, you're like a daughter I've always wanted. I'll never forget you. And that nurse, because she was helping me through my labor, and she was uplifting me. I'll never forget her either. She was uplifting me. The treatment that I got from her, it was like my mom was there. That was my mom. The nurse was like my mom, right? And and then there was another nurse that helped me when I was going through my spiritual attack, that was praying for me, that knew what I was battling when I was in a hospital in 2016. And she was also a destiny helper. All these individuals that I'm telling you about, they've never left my mind. When you meet a destiny helper, God will never let you forget that person. That's how you'll know who's a destiny helper. Because sometimes God won't come to you and say, that's a destiny helper, be on your best behavior. You won't even know when you meet a destiny helper sometimes. But how you'll know is years and years and years will go by, and that person will never leave your mind. You'll never forget that impact, the impact that person had in your life. You'll never forget it. So I say this to say that a lot of the destiny helpers that we have in our lives, sometimes we don't even know they're destiny helpers. And they can be in the most different profession. My probation officer, I didn't even know she was prophetic. My therapist at the probation office, she was prophetic too. The nurse that I bonded with when I had my daughter was prophetic. The nurse that prayed for me during my spiritual warfare was prophetic. The nurse that I bonded when I was younger was prophetic. And God told me all this a couple of days ago, that these were destiny helpers that encouraged you and pushed you, and they were all prophetic. But because of their profession, you would have never thought they were prophetic. They were very good at using their prophetic gifts without exposing the fact that they're prophetic, if you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying? So it's kind of like a lot of you guys, you don't have to be in ministry to use your prophetic gifts. You don't have to be in ministry to uplift people. You can be a nurse using your prophetic gifts. You can be a teacher using your prophetic gifts. You can be a veterinarian using your prophetic gifts. You can be a musician using your prophetic gifts. You can be a doctor using your prophetic gifts. You can be a lawyer using your prophetic gifts. God is going to always have you change someone's life while you are using your prophetic gifts in whatever profession you're in. So I wanted to just tell you guys that how even a situation that was meant to be bad for me, I was going to probation officer, I had to get therapy. That was a part of the court order for me to get therapy while I was at a probation office. And even though that was a incident that I got caught up in and the devil led me to that, I was still able to receive the works of the Lord even while going through that. You see what I'm saying? Anyways, I love you guys. I will talk to you soon. Bye.